Welcome back, guys! It's Paris. We're back with another video, aren't we? Today we're gonna talk about one of my motivating factors surrounding having anorexia and dealing with disordered eating at an extremely, low point, depressed point of my life. So I had this memory come back to me. You know how you block out certain years of your life and you're like, that does not need to be reflected on. Nope, not unless I'm with a therapist who's getting a handsome payout from an insurance provider, and we are engaging in some sort of EMDR therapeutic technique. That's when I'll bring this up. Outside of that context, I'm good. This is one of those memories, but we're gonna bring it up on here because this therapy is very expensive and this is more efficient. So when I was dealing with anorexia and was specifically at the worst point of it several years ago, of course this is now about 6 years ago, I remember constantly having these extremely detailed, elaborate, intricate fantasies surrounding the conditions that I felt like I needed to have in place before I would allow myself to recover. And those conditions had things to do with, it was mainly centered around love. That I felt like I needed to be picked romantically, that my daydream, my fantasy was about somebody loving me so much, so deeply and profoundly and honestly, earnestly, that they would throw all caution to the wind and love me out of my sickness. That was the fantasy. The fantasy was that one day somebody was just gonna someone was gonna come along and love me so much and love me back to health. And I see this now, sometimes when I make when I make YouTube videos, I like to talk about them on TikTok first to sort of test the water and see whether or not what I'm saying is gonna land, see whether or not people catch my drift, see whether or not I'm totally lost my marbles. You know what I mean? I misplaced my marbles. I like to do a little temperature test on TikTok because TikTok's easy. You can put things out pretty quickly. I've not temperature tested this, so I don't know whether or not people are gonna look at me and be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Paris. Here's a little, thumbs up because I'm scared you're a little bit crazy. But I'm gonna move right along and keep my distance. I don't know if that's gonna be the vibe, but I would like to believe that this is not an entirely out of the box experience that I had. A lot of the time when I'm using the examples of the way that girls are socialized and the sort of narratives that we're taught to internalize, I resort a lot to princesses, Disney princesses. It's an easy example and it's also quite universal for the most part. I think we're all relatively familiar with that media, and I think that it's a really common part of girls' adolescence to experience that sort of media, or to consume that sort of media. So if we look at a lot of these princesses, a lot of them have this experience of being the damsel in distress. Literally, first thing that comes to mind, Tangled, shout out Rapunzel. I was really into her. Maybe because I just had a little afro that I was a bit insecure about, and I kind of liked the idea that she had long pretty hair. Beside the point, my afro was gorgeous and it took me a second to learn that, but besides, literally not the point at all. Anyway, so I was Rapunzel, literally homegirl, locked up in a tower by that evil mean baddie stepmom, and who shows up? A man who thinks she's gorge, a man who wants to save her. Actually, don't fully remember the entire plot, but something about, I know that they kind of have this affinity towards each other. They do wind up married, of course, by the end of the film. And he comes, he saves her, he takes her out of the tower, and then shows her the world, right? I don't necessarily think that, Rapunzel was necessarily a weak woman, but she clearly was a vulnerable woman. And there's other stories where I think women are more blatantly weak. You could take something like Sleeping Beauty. Homegirl is literally knocked out when the man comes and kisses her and saves her. But specifically honing in on because I do think Disney's made an attempt to sort of make like more like strong princesses, which I don't know whether or not that was like a thought process when making Rapunzel in particular, but I'll acknowledge that exists. She definitely was very vulnerable, Rapunzel, right? Like she had never seen the world and had this dream and didn't know what was out there. And so this is one of the ways in which, you know, a princess, someone who is incredibly idealized for young girls, who is told like this, she's aspirational, and you get kids, you know, princess dresses, and you like, there are so many toys. You know, the other day I was walking through the toy aisle of a store, looking at the kids aisles. I was having to buy a toy for a child. It's not just me randomly perusing, beside the point. Tons and tons of toys pertaining to princesses. Princesses are a super aspirational figure. And what do you say is desirable in a woman when you are telling a story like Rapunzel? You're saying that vulnerability, weakness, is beautiful. And it's, you know, it's not just Rapunzel, but the ways in which we romanticize femininity in general, this a romanticization of shrinking, this romanticization of taking up less space, of being soft-spoken, of being delicate, of being hyper accommodating, right? These are the virtues that we associate with femininity, with womanhood, with good womanhood, ideal womanhood. Though all of those things are centered around weakness, around fragility. Like those are the things that we say that powerful women are masculine. They're in their masculine energy. They're being too manly. We tell independent women that they need to soften up and let a man in. Like these are all of these narratives we have surrounding a demonization of independence, of power, of personal power in women, and a romanticization, a push towards fragility. So I, you know, growing up, not at all exempt from this socialization in any way, shape, or form, none of us are. Growing up in that world was very much into this idea of my sensitivity, my fragility, me turning myself into a delicate little petal flower. That is the best thing that I can do for myself. That is the best way that I could validate my womanhood. That is the best investment I can ever make in me, you know, to make myself a very small, weak, fragile woman, and to put myself in the perfect condition to be saved by a lover, to be saved by someone big and strong that's gonna come in and love me back to health, right? Because here's the thing, my health was actively falling apart, and the people around me were incredibly concerned with what was going on, and I had every reason under the sun to not spiral further into what was going on with me. But you know what was not motivating? All of that, my family being concerned, my future, my dreams, it was the very beginning of high school. I had my entire high school experience ahead of me. There was so much potential for what could have happened. I had so many dreams, you know, growing up consuming coming of age media and all this stuff that romanticizes the high school period, and getting really excited to kind of live out my teenage dream. That was something that I was incredibly excited about, and something that I romanticized quite explicitly. I remember the day before high school, like writing this prayer to God. It was like a letter. I used to write a lot of letters to God, beside the point, but I was writing this letter to God, and I was like, give me the teenage dream, the perfect high school experience. And here I was, very ill, my first year of high school, actively having this teenage dream that I just spent so long hoping for, slipping through my fingers, and none of that was motivating. Couldn't gaff 2%. But you know what I felt in my head, the promise that I was unofficially making to myself, was that if somebody came along and loved me, then that would be good enough. That's enough to get myself up off the floor, but nothing else. Because the messaging was so explicit that being picked romantically, being desired, wanted, that is the primary goal. That has to be the primary ambition. That's the most important element. And so anything else that got in the way, anything else that prevented me from getting picked, public enemy number one needs to be shot on sight. Because I can't afford to live my life like that, of course, right? Like, my main ambition has to be getting picked. So that's what I did, and that's what and it never happened, of course. I just sat there thinking about what it would be like to be loved so fiercely. and to have someone sort of almost claim this ownership to my life, that they saved me, you know, and the ways in which we kind of say that a woman's body belongs to men, that a woman's value belongs to men, that her value can be so severely impacted by a man, right? That's why there's like itch to defile a woman specifically. Like that's why men are really obsessed with virginity, because there's a fantasy of defilement. They want to be able to be the thing that ruins you as a woman, and then in that way you also become very invested in that man because he took that thing from you. That very special, important, valuable thing. If it's virginity, it's your virtue, it's your value, it's your womanhood. And so, you know, I really romanticized, even though at the time I think I had a lot of confusion about my sexuality. I don't necessarily know what I thought about myself at the time, but regardless of even what form the person took, there was still just this desire, fundamental desire of like, I can't want to be alive for me. Who am I? I'm not valuable. Like, that's not what we like say to women, that my independent value isn't important. And so I had no ambition for my own life beyond getting picked. And so I just kept having these fantasies about like, oh, someone's gonna come and save me, and then I'm gonna love them. They're gonna love me forever because they're gonna have saved me, and then I'm gonna love them forever because they had this like really valuable thing, and you know, we're gonna go happily into the sunset. And that was worth everything, getting picked. So yeah, I think it's important to me to be able to talk about times like specifically anorexia and eating disorders and the complex motivating factors that exist beyond them, because within them, because I think that we are really elusive about the whole thing, or I think they are very elusive disorders, eating disorders, and but they're so common. They're so common, and I don't think it's until we really talk about the dark underbelly, or the motivating factor, the real motivating factor beyond just like wanting to be skinny and cute, and that we can really start, you know, moving the conversation forward and having productive conversations about eating disorder prevention. Yeah, and hopefully help people along their recovery. Thanks for watching!